Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzales, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Welcome back to another episode of the Babies in Business Podcast. I'm your host, Avram Gonzales. I'm joined by
Rachel Gonzales, co-host.
Hey, yo. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about business isn't a race when you have perspective. Rachel's going to ask me a couple different questions. Things have changed a lot in each of our lives since the birth of our son. Encountered some lessons that we probably wouldn't have had and perspective we wouldn't have had without him. Things that I know that might be a contribution to you listening right now. Let's get into it.
Great. Okay, so like you said, we're going to talk about how perspective can really change things from feeling like a race in our business to being totally different. So tell me about a typical day before Lincoln was born in the business, and then how's it different than now?
That's been a big change. As having a child has a lot of unpredictability when it comes to managing your day-to-day schedule. Suddenly you have all these things that you didn't have to manage before popping up. Life was simpler before Lincoln was born. And I found that I would spend entire days that upon the conclusion of the day, I would ask myself, what did I actually accomplish? It was difficult to pinpoint anything that felt significant as a contribution at the end of the day. And I felt like I spent a lot of time drifting. I wasn't very focused. There also wasn't the pressure of time to get things done.
Yeah.
So things that today take me 20, 25 minutes, thinking about that task that I did this morning before we started the day, those things would take hours before. Why? Because I would get up and I would take breaks. I'd be farting around on my phone, all kinds of stuff.
And if you hear this little snurching in the background, this is Zuna. She's sitting on my lap visiting here with us. But I do want to bring some perspective to our life as an entrepreneur and having kids. We have chosen to not put Lincoln into daycare. We have him with us.
That's right.
We have your parents watch him oftentimes on Tuesday and Friday, but that's not always the case. Things come up. So we do have him at home most of the time. So the times that we find to work are when he's napping.
It's true. It's true. And so now I would say I'm way more focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way more focused. And I also feel quite fulfilled as a result of the focus because some days I might get 2 hours to work and that's it. But what I have extracted from those 2 hours, I know is enough. That's something else also struggled through this transition was not putting in the hours, feeling like whether that was enough or not. Maybe that's a guy thing. I'm not sure what it is. But I feel a lot more fulfilled through the focus now because even like recording this podcast today, this is like the 4th or 5th one we recorded today.
Yeah.
And I just feel incredibly accomplished as a result of being so hyper-focused and in charge of the schedule that we have. So before I was just wandering around, and now because of Lincoln, I have these time constraints that are very real, but they've just made me better.
And yeah, like you said, before a day was wandering and not really knowing, but we filled the time. We worked the whole day, and now it's maybe an hour here or there or 2 hours at a time, and you really do get the things done. And I think if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that we try to do things that gets our time back and prioritizing things and having things that are important, doing those important things. So I think that's maybe why you felt so fulfilled with the focus is because you have had so much focus on what's important. So you know that when you do sit down to do something, that it is the most important thing and the most impactful thing as well.
It's true.
So would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that.
Okay. I would love to hear more about this morphing of how you felt in this journey. So I'd love to know, how has your perspective on business changed?
I would say that I started very frustrated after he arrived because there were all these things that I wanted to do and I had to put them all on pause. We've recorded other episodes talking about really simplifying your business and your life to get more out of it. And that was something that we couldn't do early on because there just wasn't time to do it. We'd also set aside the time to be with him and be present. That's not what I'm talking about. The
Right.
time that we dedicated towards being present with him after he was born, that's different. It was after that, trying to get back to where we were before, that left me pretty frustrated.
Yeah. The
And
transition from taking the time off to how do we transition back into normal working schedule?
exactly. And so the thing that has really helped me exercise more patience is no longer comparing our business and our growth to those of peers in our industry. And I think it's like really easy to get caught up in the hype and the accolades and the recognition that you might feel hitting certain revenue goals and being able to share that or be celebrated on that by your peers, whether that's masterminds or different groups that you might be in.
And you're super competitive.
I am pretty competitive.
So it's hard to see that and not be like, wow, I can really do better than that.
And the thing that I realize is if you're chasing money, it's always going to be a race. How fast can you get it? How efficiently can you get it? All that stuff.
Sure.
And whose dream is that? That was the other thing that came full circle for me was like, what goals do I have right now? It's like a question I asked myself. What goals do I have right now that aren't even mine?
I love that question. I love that question. What goals do I have right now that aren't even mine? I
Yeah,
think we need to ask that question.
it's true. And so it was through asking a lot of those questions that I got clear on what I wanted. And we talk about a lot of the podcast. Now it's more about, I wouldn't say necessarily balance as much as just having fulfillment in every area and
Yeah.
tending to the things that matter most. And family really wasn't a thing before, and now it is.
Building a business while raising a family can be tough to juggle for any entrepreneur. Knowing where to focus and how to spend your limited time is critical to your success. That's why Babies in Business has produced and made available a fantastic audio resource for you. It's titled 5 Key Focus Areas to Build a Profitable Business Without Burnout. During this short training, Rachel and Avram peel back the curtain on their secrets to building a business that serves your family, your dreams, and beyond. To download your free copy of the 5 Key Focus Areas, go to babiesandbiz.com/download. Again, that's babiesandbiz.com/download to get your free copy. We hope you enjoy. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, because now that the family has become not just you and me, but you and me plus, really does take a lot of planning to keep that in mind and to make sure that there's time for it. I love those insights. I think that I hope that this is helping you as a listener to maybe change perspective, give yourself some time, reflect on what is or isn't working for you. And so I'd love to hear, we have 2 more questions for you that
Okay.
I'd love to hear more about your journey here. How do you tackle challenges now versus before?
Perspective changes everything. I think about my time at the gym, and when you're running on that treadmill at an incline and you're working your butt off, and then you lower the incline, it suddenly feels you're moving just as fast, like you're flying. But the only thing that changed is the incline. And I think that's like what life has felt like since Lincoln's birth. Business challenges now feel pretty small.
Okay.
Like a client that needs something or is being demanding is just such a small thing. You might have a challenge with meeting a particular objective or a deadline. It doesn't matter. Oftentimes there's obstacles that come up in the household that impact our ability to perform in the business. That's the instant pot going off in the background. That they just seem so easily surmountable. And I think the reason is because with a child in the home, it's all unpredictable. And there's very little that's in your power to manage your time or manage, like, you can't like manage your kid's day.
Sure.
You can help guide them, but if they're not feeling good or just something is off or they're going through a growth spurt or they're teething, these are all things that you cannot control and you have to get better at rolling with the punches. So I remember when you, Rachel, when you left for the first time coming back from maternity leave, you went back to your regularly scheduled BNI meeting, middle of the day, middle of the week on a Wednesday. And that was the first time that I was going to be 100% solo for 3 hours. And I was terrified. And it was literally the most challenging thing because I wasn't as comfortable like putting him down for a nap. He was less comfortable with me doing it versus mom not being home. There were all these like challenges around that. And so I think that perspective of something as simple for me as putting the baby down for a nap was so challenging versus the business stuff. I just feel like we have so much more control over. So yeah, now I feel like things that come up are just easier to handle.
I love it.
Yeah. So being challenged has been a really difficult thing, but such an empowering thing in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important also to bring voice to the things that were hard and to recognize where we've come from, how far you've come with Lincoln. You're an expert is putting him down now. You
That's
have a
right.
lot of fun when I go to BNI, and that's yours and his day. So that also gets to morph and become different. But I love that you brought up perspective, that it's just different. We can change our perspective. We do have power over that. We don't always have power over the circumstances around us. So I love that. I want to move on to this here. So I really love this question because I know you have a lot to say about it. What or why is fitness important to you now?
Yeah. I grew up playing a lot of sports, soccer, volleyball. Those were two big ones for me. Taekwondo. But those were all sports that I was actively engaged in high school and then a little bit in college. When you leave that environment, the opportunities for that aren't just sitting right in front of you. So for me, fitness ended up taking a back seat because it wasn't in my mind. It wasn't accessible. It wasn't top of mind. It didn't feel easy for me to go out and join a volleyball team with people that I've never met before. Like all those things just became a little overwhelming and daunting for me. They also took a back seat because I just started my business. So we're talking like 10 years ago, 13 years ago. And that was my priority. I had to figure out a way to make enough money to sustain myself or get a job. There's no way in hell I wanted to get a job. So it was like, do or die. But then years went by and fitness was no longer a part of my life. So I didn't identify with that. I didn't think of myself as a runner or somebody who could lift weights. I don't know. You just don't have this picture of yourself when you're so far removed.
Sure.
What I loved about this transition for me in the last 6 months is that firstly, you came to bat for me. Rachel recognized that I just wasn't feeling myself. I didn't realize how much of my own self-confidence I had lost. Because when you're in it, you don't see it. And going back to the gym and getting fit again and on this journey has been so helpful for my confidence, my energy levels, all these obvious things that people talk about. But I didn't have something that was just for me. You helped make that a priority and make it happen. There's a whole story behind this, and I just love you to death for what you did for me and pushing me and helping me make it happen. The reason it's important for me now, though, is because I think as entrepreneurs, we're used to, and I'm not saying this is everybody, I think we're used to treating our bodies as secondary to the mission rather than the mission. So what I mean by that is without our bodies, we can't run a business.
Sure.
Without our health, we can't run a business. Without our health, we can't be a mother, father. We can't be there for our family. And it just didn't hit me the same way until now. And having this be a part of my life now, I just can't think of a time in the future where I would ever give it up again or not have it as a high priority in my life.
Yeah. So I think this is great. A lot of what you've been talking about today is perfected, and how things can change just by simple changes that we make, and then we view from a different point of view, and our perspective is completely changed. And I love, so thank you for helping us understand more about your journey, and instead of seeing it as a race, seeing it more as the journey. So loving the journey and being present in the journey and really asking those questions to see, are you on your own journey or somebody else's journey? I really love that. And if you've loved hearing about this topic, we'd love to hear more about maybe what you'd like to hear us talk about. What are the struggles that you're having in your business? What are some of the perspective changes you've had with children, with business? Things like that. We would love to hear about those things.
Connect with us on social media at Babies and Biz Pod on all the major social platforms. Send us a note. Subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies and Business Podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.